Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on the Odyssey 3.14 method of reinventing your business model, presented by Professor Laurence Ortega and offered in partnership with the new online Masters in Innovation and Entrepreneurship. My name is Elizabeth Alette, and I am a program advisor at HEC Paris. I'll be helping to moderate this session today. And I warmly invite you to share your comments and questions via the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We also invite you to take part in the various quizzes which will pepper Professor Laurence Ortega's presentation today. Now, before I hand over to Professor Laurence Ortega, I would just like to briefly present HEC Paris, as well as our new online Masters in Innovation and Entrepreneurship, as this class, which Professor Ortega is about to teach, is a sample of what she will be teaching on this new online Masters. So, who are we? Who is, or what is HEC Paris? For those of you who may not be familiar with HEC Paris is a very old business school which has been training top executives and managers since its inception in 1881. Each year we train over 8,500 executives and have been committed to helping them develop their entrepreneurial projects for over 30 years. So we're now launching a brand new program in partnership with Coursera, the Online Masters in Innovation and Entrepreneurship. The aim of this program is to help you to identify and develop innovative and high potential commercial opportunities, either within your own company or within a startup context. The courses on this program are particularly relevant for business people in charge of innovation, business development, as well as future and prospective entrepreneurs. Furthermore, the online program and the online format is ideal for busy professionals wishing to continue working while studying at their very own pace. Now, the Online Masters is composed of 20 courses which can be broken down into two parts. The first part is the self-paced section and consists of 12 courses. The second part is the project-based section and is composed of 8 courses. The first 12 courses can be taken as a standalone certificate or can be further divided into 3 specializations, each comprised of 4 courses. I will talk a little bit more at length about these specializations a little bit later on. Now, the Online Masters in Innovation and Entrepreneurship will start in September 2017. The online certificate as well will start in September 2017, and a new intake will start each month. Please note that the project-based courses will start in June 2018 and that all the coursework needs to be completed by December 2018 in order to graduate from the Online Masters in Innovation and Entrepreneurship. So, as I mentioned, the first 4 courses comprise a specialization, the scaling up specialization. So in this specialization, you develop your skills in scaling up a business, starting from 0 and growing it into a business of around 100 employees. In particular, you will learn how to scale up operations within tight resource constraints. The next specialization focuses on creativity and innovation. You will learn how to boost creativity and also how to manage new product development in teams. And the third and last specialization focuses on business strategy and its importance for innovation. We will first define business strategy, then we'll help you to understand how it applies to innovation, and finally, we'll teach you how it can be used to engage employees and to incentivize them to be as innovative as possible. The last 8 courses are the project-based courses. In the project-based section of the program, you will work in teams to advance a project from conception all the way through to commercialization during a 6-month period. You will be mentored by a seasoned entrepreneur or business leader, which you will meet about once a week. When you successfully graduate, you can then apply for seed funding from HEC Paris or apply to be part of the HEC Paris incubator. Now, the online masters will require a time commitment of roughly 10 to 15 hours of personal work per week. Viewing videos, submitting assignments, completing quizzes, and so forth. You will also need to successfully complete 11 proctored exams, as well as the team project, which I just mentioned, in order to graduate from the online masters. Now, if you would like to learn more about how to apply to this program, as well as the eligibility criteria for the online masters, I welcome you to stay tuned until the very end of this program, of this webinar, when I will be describing the eligibility and the admissions criteria. But for now, and before I hand over to Professor Laurence Lehmann Ortega for a presentation of her innovative method, let me just say a couple words about Professor Lehmann Ortega. As affiliate professor at HEC Paris, Professor Laurence Lehmann Ortega teaches strategy and innovation at the Grande École, as well as our executive education programs. She is currently the academic director of the Master in Strategic Management, which has been ranked #1 worldwide by The Economist. And she developed the Odyssey 3.14 method while completing her PhD in business model innovation at the University of Aix. With the help of fellow HEC Paris professor Hélène Chanu-Musicas, she transformed this technique so it would be relevant to both entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. So to date, she has trained over 7,000 executives worldwide in Europe, in France, in Brazil, as well as in China. So I will now hand over to Professor Laurence Lehmann Ortega so you can get a glimpse of the academic content of this new online master's, as well as a glimpse of her Odyssey 3.14 method. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Elizabeth. So I will start with this presentation about Odyssey 3.14. And maybe the easiest is just to give you an overview of the approach, is to start with a couple of examples. My first examples will be Microsoft. And 25 years ago, Microsoft understood that we would never ever read a paper encyclopedia anymore. So they started a new business, and as you know, it's a very successful, very strategic company. They have investigated to find all the competitors that were doing the same thing. And they had identifying, among others, a small company, a small NGO, not-for-profit organization. And this not-for-profit organization, they didn't really, they were Microsoft, so they didn't really feel the fear in front of a not-for-profit organization. But as you know, this not-for-profit organization is now the leader in the worldwide online encyclopedia. Of course, I wanted to talk about Wikipedia. My second very similar example is a company like Hyatt. Imagine you have a hotel chain, you're everywhere, all over the world. And when you think about innovation, you think about changing your rooms, the design of the rooms, training the people at the front desk, making things different in the hotel. But you don't really see a new entrant that is Airbnb. Imagine this company started with less than 10 years ago, and is now the valuation of Airbnb is higher of any of the major hotel chains in the world. And finally, my last example is Porsche. As you know, one of the most successful car manufacturers in the world, one of the most profitable per car. And this company didn't see yet another new entrant, and I guess you have guessed who I want to talk about. Of course, I want to talk about Tesla. And Porsche didn't really see or didn't really understand the arrival of Tesla, because this was a mature market, and basically there were a lot of competitors already playing. But one of the reasons they didn't see this new entrant is probably also because when they think about when they think about a car, when they think about why people would buy a Porsche, most people buy a Porsche because they like, among other ideas, but they like the sound of the engine. And the problem, or some would say the advantage with an electric car, is that you don't have sound. So it was not a problem for Porsche imagining a new entrant in the car industry. It was for Porsche to imagine a new electric sports car, because the sports car wouldn't make any noise. And with those three examples, I just wanted to show you that innovation mostly is in our heads, that is in our minds. That is what is difficult if you have an expertise, if you are in a business, is to think in a different way, is to challenge what is in your mind. And again, I will go back on this idea at the end, but I wanted to start with this, just a couple of examples. 3 years ago now, the Financial Times ended the year by saying that 2014 was the year of disruptive innovation, meaning that this was the year when those innovations became kind of mainstream. We talked about Airbnb, you can think about LinkedIn, you can think about Uber, BlaBlaCar. In the finance industry, you would find Lending Club or Zopar, which are P2P banks, Kickstarter, which is for prototyping. And I would say even we in business schools are challenged by massive open online courses. So the question is not which industry is going to be disrupted next. The question is mainly when. So this means that all companies have to get ready for this. And let me just start with a little quiz here. I would like to know, and you can follow the quiz and just answer the quiz while we're talking. According to you, how important is innovation in companies today? So if you're currently in a company, maybe you can answer for your company. If you're still a student, maybe you can just answer in general. What do you think? What type of priority is innovation today? Is it a very high priority number one among top priorities, second order priorities, or is it not important at all? I'll just give you a couple of more seconds to answer this question. It's really just to have you think about this for a minute. How important do you think innovation is in companies? So I see that most of you today consider that it's among the top priorities. Just a couple of more minutes to give everyone a chance to participate. I'll just give you 2 or 3 more seconds. Okay, so I'll just end the poll here. And as you've seen, I agree with most of you. Innovation is indeed among the top priorities in companies. So about 2/3 of you said that it's among the top priorities, and 20% thought it's priority number one. And you're actually right, because if we look at those at the survey that has been done by the Conference Board Challenge last year, innovation was the top priority worldwide for CEOs, and innovation has been pretty high over the past years. So innovation is definitely a priority. Innovation is difficult. And so what's the problem? So why is it difficult? What do companies do when they try to start? So most often what they do is they try to innovate in products. And the problem is, as I really like this quote by Gary Hamel, who says that out there in some garage, there is an entrepreneur who's forging a bullet with your company's name on it. You've got one option now to shoot first. You've got to out-innovate the innovators. And so innovation is top priority in firms. There are innovators everywhere. And however, in companies, although it's top priority, very often they don't really know where to start and how to start. So usually what companies do is they think that innovation is linked to technology. So they think about Apple or other innovative companies, and they would start by thinking about a technological product. And the problem is that you can have products that are very innovative, but that are not technological at all. So, for example, this product by Danone that you might know, that is Actimel, was a very interesting product innovation about 20 years ago when they started. And it's not a radical innovation, it's nothing special, but I can tell you that the profitability of this product is very, very high. So the first message would be, innovation is not only about product. It's important to do product innovation. It's important to think about technology, but innovation can be a product that is not technological. So then companies can also think about another form of innovation. I wanted to ask you this. the Toyota production system that has been introduced by Toyota about 40 years ago, was this innovation. This is a process in which Toyota only starts producing the product when the product is actually ordered. So it's called lean manufacturing sometimes. And of course, this was also a form of innovation. This is not product innovation. We can call this process innovation. So this is yet another form of innovation. This other example is a Brazilian company called Samco. And what is very interesting in this company, it's considered as one of the most democratic companies in the world. What does this mean? It means that the people are completely self-organized. There are very little levels of hierarchy in this company. This is why you very often see the CEO of this company with a cup of coffee, because he says basically that his role is very limited in the company and that people are just self-organized. Well, was this another form of innovation? I would argue yes, and we could call this managerial innovation. So we see that there are many different types of innovation: product innovation, technological innovation, process innovation, managerial innovation. Yet there is also, this is just what I just mentioned, there is also another way of looking at innovation, that is to say that some people consider that you can only call innovation something that is very radical, very disruptive, very extreme, that completely changes the way we did before. Other people, and I definitely would be among those other people, also consider that something incremental, that is to say when you change something compared to what you did yesterday, is also innovation, but this would be incremental innovation. And I think personally that all those are forms of innovation. Now, when we put all this together, this means that at the end we have a typology of innovation. And the question is, very often in companies, where should we start? Well, our approach that we developed with Odyssey 314 is to say we should yet go for another approach to innovation, that is business model innovation, which is a combination, as you will see, of all the other forms of innovation, but is another approach to innovation that can be very helpful to look at things in a different way. I would say by essence, business model innovation is rather radical, but basically, if you go into the process of thinking about radical business models, then you can also find incremental changes along the way. And so this is how we have developed the Odyssey 314 approach. The idea was to say it's a specific approach to innovation that is more holistic, that takes into account the whole company, and that really is focused on reinventing the business model. It's called 314 because it focuses on the three components of the business model and offers 14 directions to explore, and I will show you some of those directions later on. We also call it an Odyssey because innovation is like a journey, an adventure. You know where you start, but you don't really know where you get at the end. So this is also the idea of an Odyssey, of something that it's not a linear process. It's not something that is very easy to do. So hence the name Odyssey 314. And we have collected about 100 cases of companies that have invented or reinvented a business model, and I will share some of them with you in a minute. So this is the approach, and I would like to start giving you a glimpse at this approach. So first, let's talk about what a business model is. So there are many definitions around business models out there. There is no consensus about the definition of a business model. But what we have to remember is that the name business model became a buzzword at the time when the internet was born, basically. This was in the middle of the 1990s. And at that time, entrepreneurs started new businesses with this new thing called the internet. Think about Amazon, think about Google at that time. So they had to explain how they would eventually one day make money with this new thing called the internet. And this is where they came up with this word of business model. It was just a description to the investors of how they would eventually one day make a profit. So if we just take a couple of seconds here and you try to think, if I tell you a business model is a description of how a company is making a profit, what do you think are the different things that you would like to see in the business model? Take a couple of seconds to think about this. I'm not asking you to type anything in the chat, but just take for yourself a couple of seconds. If you had to describe a business, if you had to describe how a business is making money, what would you think the components are? What would you like to see? So here are probably the things that you might have thought about. You might want to describe the products or services of the company. You might think of all the costs the company incurs. You might think about the clients that it has to serve. You might think about the value chain, that is all basically the supply chain of the company. You might think also of its revenues, of its sales, maybe the capital employed, that is all the factories, all the machines that the company uses. You might think about the price of the product, the price level, and about some resources and competencies that this company is using. So basically, here we have a description of the business model. The business model for us in Odyssey 314 has three components. The first component is what we call the value proposition. The value proposition is a description of the customers that we serve, the product and or services, and the price. The second component of the business model is the value architecture. That is basically, if the value proposition answers the question who and what, the value architecture answers the question how. How am I organized in order to deliver this product or service in due time to my customer? And then finally, the third component is what we call the profit equation. But the profit equation is just a financial way of looking at the two previous components. Because if you have a very good value proposition, this will generate revenue. So the revenue stems from the value proposition. And the cost and capital employed level are explained by the choices that you've made on the value architecture, on the operations. So basically, this is how we describe our business model with the three pillars: the value proposition, the value architecture, and the profit equation. And the image of the business model is that those different pillars have to fit to each other in order to generate a profit. For example, we could say that it's very easy for a company to be low price. Price is something you decide upon. You can decide to be 30% cheaper than the market tomorrow. However, it's very difficult for a company to be low cost. And so if you want to generate a profit, you need to have both low cost and low prices, of course. And this means that it has to be consistent, that value proposition and value architectures need to be consistent in order to generate a profit. So this is our business model concept. So let's start with an example. The first example I'm going to talk to you about, as you can see, is not a very high-tech, neither glamorous product. I'm going to talk about truck tires. So very specific business of this company that you probably all know, that is called Michelin. And so a couple of years ago, Michelin was facing a certain problem. So here we're going to talk about a specific business in Michelin where they sell truck tires to bigger transportation companies. For the very big transportation companies, Michelin would sell the tires directly to them. So Michelin is facing a problem, and you probably understand this. Michelin is a very high-end product, as you know. So the price of a tire, this is a price per tires in euros, would be 400 for Michelin and 250 for new low-cost entrants at that time. And so Michelin is facing a real problem because there is a big difference in the price, as you can see. Imagine how many tires you need on a truck. So it's not just one, it's about 10. So this means that the amount that you have to, the difference in euros is really huge. However, Michelin also always had an argument because the tires of Michelin are very long-lasting tires. This means that once you have purchased the tire, the truck company can regroove it. Then it can retread it. That is a specific maintenance where you start again from as if the tire was completely new. Then you regroove it again. And then finally you can dispose of the tire. Of course, those Maintenance steps have costs, so regrooving would be about 550 euros, retreading would be 150. But if you put all those costs together, if you look at the total cost of ownership of the tire, at the end, and this is the usual argument of Michelin, the cost per kilometer of a Michelin tire that is very well maintained is actually lower than the cost per kilometer of a low-cost tire. And this is very interesting because this is how Michelin started to think. This is their conventional argument. They would say, okay, we know how to build a very long-lasting tire. The question now is, sorry about this. The question now is, what can you do with this? Michelin has more and more problems convincing the customer to buy this low-cost, this very high-end tire. So Michelin actually did something specific. They decided to sell kilometers rather than selling the products, rather than selling the tires. So what I would like to know from you right now is what you would consider this. Would you consider this as is selling kilometer? Would you consider this not to be an innovation? Would you consider this being a product innovation, a process innovation, or business model innovation? I will give you some seconds to think about this problem, and then I would broadcast the results. Just think for a minute of how you would consider, would this be not an innovation at all, because basically it's just selling kilometers, right? It's not selling something else. It's still selling a tire at the end. Would you consider this as a product innovation because it's a different way of selling the tire? Would you call this a process innovation, or would you call this a business model innovation? So I still have a couple of seconds here for all those who did not participate yet to get a chance. Just make sure that you vote on the poll that appears on the screen below. Okay, I see some of you are very shy and don't want to participate. Let's see. Okay, 5 more seconds for all of you to decide. Okay. Okay, so let me broadcast the results. So as you can see, over 80% of you considered that this is a business model innovation. And so you're perfectly right. This is indeed a business model innovation. So let's now see why we consider this as a business model innovation. Let's look at the value proposition first. When you sell a tire, a Michelin tire, you sell the tire. What you tell your customer is this is a very high-end product at a high price, and you have to maintain it. Okay, that's the value proposition. The value architecture to do this, you probably, if we just leave aside the factories for a minute, what you need to have is salespeople and maybe some warehouses all over Europe, but basically you don't need a very sophisticated value architecture. Finally, concerning the profit equation, you make money by selling the tire. Let's now look at what is different when you sell kilometers. Well, when you sell kilometers, you actually tell your customer, your transportation company, Michelin will tell the transportation company that this is a completely hassle-free value proposition. What the transportation company can do is be completely free of thinking about its tires. It doesn't have to think about its tires anymore. It can concentrate on its own business because Michelin is taking care of everything. And probably, since usually the tires were not very well maintained by transportation companies, because Michelin will do it, it will probably be even cheaper per kilometer. So the value proposition is very interesting for the customer, for the transportation company, because it's a completely hassle-free business model. It's better at probably a lower overall cost for the customer. Let's look now at the value architecture. So as you remember, when selling the tires, what they just needed when they were selling the product was a sales force, and they needed some warehouses all over Europe. Well, here we have exactly the same. We still need Salesforce. We still need the Salesforce to go to transportation companies and explain the business. But we also need something else. We also need to maintain the tires. That is, that Michelin needs to be ready everywhere, all over Europe, from one day to the other, to be ready to do the maintenance of the truck tire, wherever the truck is, all over Europe. This means that from one day to the other, they had to build an infrastructure of maintenance. So of course, this would have been very costly and difficult to build. So what they decided to do, they decided to outsource this maintenance part to distributors, to companies such as Euromaster in Europe that are doing the maintenance of the tire for Michelin, and they become subcontractors of Michelin. So we have a very radically different value proposition. We also have a very radically different value architecture. Let's now look at the profit equation. Well, the profit equation is also very different because the revenue of Michelin will go up because they now also charge for the maintenance. The cost will also go up because they will have to pay for the distributors that actually perform the maintenance. But the capital employed, the money you need, will also go up. Why? Because Michelin is now owning the tire. This is called access-based business models, and so it's very interesting. Those are very interesting types of business models where you sell the access to the product and you don't sell the product itself anymore. So those business models have really largely developed over the past years and are very interesting to look at. And in Odyssey 314, we really decipher them and try to understand them in depth. So I think this is a very interesting business model because you still have the same product. It's still the same tire. However, as I just tried to demonstrate, it's a very, very different business model. So you can have business model innovation without product innovation. So your business model is a very different form of innovation. So now that we've seen this first example, I will just go on with some other examples of the Odyssey 314. I've just illustrated the 3 pillars of the business model. What I would like to do now is to give you an overview of the 14 directions. So we will have 7 directions to explore in the value proposition side and 7 directions to explore on the value architecture side. This means that really those directions are there to inspire you, to make sure that you use your creativity so as to invent or reinvent a business model. What we've done is we have collected those 100 cases and we have tried to find the kind of pattern that companies have used to try to radically change the business model. And we came up with those 14 directions, 7 on the value proposition, 7 on the value architecture. As you will see, those directions are not exclusive from each other, but they're really there just to stimulate your creativity. So let's start. Of course, I won't have time today to go through the 14 directions, but I wanted to give you a kind of overview of what those directions are. So the first directions on the value proposition is to reduce clients' overall costs. When we talk about costs, it can be to make it free, for example, for the customer. So how could you make your product free for a customer? This happens a lot in the internet world. So for example, Skype would be a good example. We use it for free. But another example, a non-technological example, would be JC Decaux. This company is a French company that developed a very interesting business model about 30 years ago, where they give free street furniture to municipalities or public transportation companies. They give them the street furniture, the very designful street furniture for free, and they even maintain it for free. That is, it's always good looking, it's always nice, it's always clean. And how do they do this? Well, they get paid by a third party. As you know, they get paid by advertisement. So it's very often in this type of what are called double-sided markets. That is, you have 2 types of customer, one customer for which it's free, like the transportation company, and one company that is paying, the advertiser. You can make it free for part of your customer. For Skype, it's what we call freemium models. That is, models that are partly free. You can use Skype for free, but then you can also have a premium version of Skype if you want to access even more functionalities. So this is a first example of this first direction, reducing a customer's overall cost or price. The next example is a very interesting example from an architect in Chile. He wanted to make more affordable housing, especially for people who don't have a lot of money. So he built what he calls half houses. As you can see on this picture, those are half houses on the picture at the top part of the slide. Basically, what he builds are half houses. The house is half finished, partially finished. And when people have money again, so this would mean that the house is not as expensive as a full house, but everything is ready. So when the people have money again, they would finish the house on their own. And this has been very successful because it makes the house much more affordable for poor people. Another example is to reduce costs for customers, because you can think about reducing the price, but reducing the cost is somewhat different. Here you have the example of the cement company Lafarge, because as you can see, what we wanted to do with Odyssey 314 is to provide many examples in B2C, but also in B2B, in very different industries. So here, for example, this is the example of Lafarge. So as you know, this company is producing cement, and they focus on a specific type of customer, that is all those customers that are building drills in the Middle East to explore for gas exploration. So those they dig very deep in the earth, and so they use cement. When you use cement in this type of area, it's super hot in the Middle East. So this means that they use the cement. So the price of cement is high, but there is also a very high cost of water. So what they have developed a cement that uses less water. This means that this is a specialty cement. This means that the price of the cement, as you can see here on the little graph on the left, the price of the cement itself is higher. However, since you need less water, the overall cost for customer is reduced. So again, in this first direction that we call reduce the cost for customers, you can think about reducing the price, making it free, or reducing the price, but you can also think about the total cost that your customer incurs, and in this case, you can have a higher price, but in total, a lower cost. So this was direction number 2 about reducing, this was direction number 1, sorry, about reducing customers' cost. I'll just give you another example. In direction number 2, reduce clients' hassle. This is a company that has just started in the UK, and I thought it was very it perfectly illustrates this direction. This company is called Air Sorted. They realized that a lot of people don't put their apartment on Airbnb, because if you do, you need to be there to give the keys, you need to organize for cleaning, you need to organize all the stuff about renting your apartment at Airbnb. So this is why they created this company called Air Sorted. You have it all sorted by this company. It's a completely, as they say, hassle-free Airbnb. So this is a very good illustration of the second direction, which was about reducing clients' hassle. My next example is direction number 5. Again, I won't go through all those directions, but direction number 5, which is to search other segments or other industries. Let me give you here another very interesting example of a bank in South Africa. This bank is called First National Bank, and this bank really wanted to help poor people to save money. And they started with this very stupid question: why don't poor people save money? Well, the answer is because they don't have any to save. But they digged a little bit deeper in the spending of their customers, of those poor customers, and they realized that a lot of poor people buy lottery tickets, because when you're poor, that's the only dream that you can actually afford. And so they thought that this was really stupid, because as we know from our statistics course, the chances that you get back this money is very, very little. But still, people need to dream. So one way of doing it would be to tell people, don't play the lottery, put this money on a saving account. But this doesn't work. So they figured out something else that I think was very smart. they offered a saving account on which you don't get any interest. So if every month you put €5, at the end of the year you have saved €60. However, once a year they will draw in a lottery one account owner that will win all the interest from all the accounts. So you still save money, but then you also have a thrill to participate into a lottery. Of course, you won't get as much as you would get from a conventional lottery, but you have your money. So that's the good news. So this has been very, very successful in South Africa. It's now called a million a month account. It has a TV show and things like this. So this is exactly what we want to show with this direction, search other industries, because very often when we try to be innovative, we look at, we do benchmarks, we look at our competitors, but here it's really the idea, look into other industries, just as this bank has done, by looking at the lottery industry. So this is what we mean with this direction about searching other industries. My last example, my last direction on the value proposition side would be to modify the revenue stream. So this is also a very, very interesting direction to investigate. In this direction, you try to see how you can charge your customer in a different way. Let's look at this example. Let's say you're a facility manager, you manage a building wherever, in London, in New York, and the cost of energy in this building is about 100 per year. You know that if you invest in products such as those by Honeywell, for example, those are presence detectors or temperature regulators. You know that if you invest 40 in those devices, you will have annual savings of 15. This means that after about 3 years, this is a good investment. However, most of the time, those companies like Honeywell or Schneider Electric, they have problems selling those products because their customers don't have the 40 to invest. So they decided to go for a completely different business model. Any idea if what they have done? So the problem is the upfront investment, just as for the Michelin tire. So they could imagine things about renting, for example, or doing things like this. But I see someone proposes leasing, or Grace proposes buy it for them. Exactly, this is what they do. They actually give it for free to their customers. And how do they make money? I see that someone is typing, so maybe I'll wait for your answer. So they could do it for a subscription. That's a very good idea also. But they go even further. They give it for free, and they make money on the savings done by the customer. That is, they would take during 3 years, they would take out the savings. So it doesn't cost anything for the customers. They take the savings, and after 3 years, the product belongs to the customer. So there is zero risk for the customer. It's called energy performance contracting. So it's very heavy contracting, but it's a very good idea. If your product allows your customer to save money, then you can actually get paid on the money saved by your customer. So this is another way of doing it. Yes, and I agree with Shama, who says this is brilliant. Yeah, I completely agree. This is brilliant, and I'll give you many, many other examples like this. So as you can see here, this is a summary of our 7 directions on the value proposition side. Those directions are not exclusive one from each other. As you can see here, I could have illustrated direction 1, 2, and 7 with the Michelin Fleet Solution case when they sell kilometers rather than selling the tire, right? So those directions are not exclusive. Again, they're just here to inspire you or to inspire your creativity. Let's just look at a couple of examples on the value architecture side, and then we'll do a little exercise before, and we'll make sure we'll be right on time. We don't want to take you more than 1 hour for this webinar. So the example that I wanted to mention here is direction number 10. So this direction is called eliminate or add one or several steps in the value chain. So the example here is a Dutch company called Desso. And this company started to sell carpets. So they do office carpets, as you can see here in the picture. And they started to sell those carpets in per square meter, but also they started to rent it. So as I mentioned before, access-based, usage-based, or access-based business models, so value proposition, are very fashionable today. So they started to do this. But then they realized when you are the owner of the carpet, it means that at the end of the life of the carpet, you take the carpet back. This means that you're left with an old carpet that you need to throw away. But since they are the owner, they now have an incentive to actually recycle this old carpet. So this is what they did. They designed the carpet so that it's easy to recycle. And since they own the carpet during all the life, when the carpet is old, they bring it back and they recycle it into 3 different parts, as you can see here in the picture. One part will be sold to the road industry because they can't use it again, but the 2 other parts go back into the main process. And this is called circular economy. This is when you take back, when you actually use all the material to put it back in the loop of your production. This is called circular economy. And of course, combining usage-based and circular economy are models that we will look into the details because they're very, very interesting to understand, especially, of course, from an environmental aspect, but also from a profitability aspect. So this was just one example on the value architecture side, because again, I don't want to take you too much time, but I would like to, before I finish and we turn to questions, I would like you to do a little exercise. And here, I will show you a small video. This is a video about this company that is called Big Belly. So they have invented something completely new. And I would like you to watch the film, watch the little video that is very short. But while you're watching the video, I would like you to think about the different business models that they can use. Of course, they could just sell the product, but as you will see, this is a very expensive product. Try to think about all the others that they could do, all the other business models that they could use. Let's watch the video. And while you're watching, you can start to answer the question, how many business models?
Big Belly is a more streetwise way to manage waste and recycling. It's a solar-powered smart waste unit in city centres, retail high streets, transit hubs, education, shopping malls, parks and other public spaces. When the public deposit rubbish in the waste or recycling units, a sensor measures capacity and a compactor presses it all down. This allows the unit to swallow up to 8 times more waste than a standard street bin before it fills up. The unit then sends an email notification to say how full it is and when it will be ready to be emptied. This real-time data is used in a clean management system to improve operational performance and manage costs. Big Belly is proven to reduce the number of collections by up to 80% and collection costs by 75%. Big Belly is proven to cut CO2 emissions, produce huge fuel savings, and reduce the need for collection trucks. This has proven to create cleaner streets with less vermin, fewer pests, and more attractive public spaces, with a real visible commitment to sustainability. Big Belly is saving time, cutting costs, improving the environment, and building better communities using smart data and cloud-driven technologies everywhere, from New York to Nottingham, Tokyo to Aberdeen, Amsterdam to Dublin.
Got this? So how many business models could you imagine besides selling the product? I see that some of you are super creative because some of you already found more than 4 business models that could be used. So I guess you also see the results here. Let's see. So most of you have found at least three business models, so that's great. So this is a very good. I see that even 30% of you have found more than 4. Wow, I'm really impressed. This is great. So see, this is exactly the kind of exercise that we do also in the course about just having seen a couple of other examples can inspire you. Of course, I see that Grace here writes that they could do advertisement on the bins. Definitely, this would be definitely one business model that they could use. They could, what they could also do is they could get paid on the savings done by other companies, as we just mentioned in the example before with Schneider Electric or Honeywell. They can, of course, mix because those business models are not exclusive. They could also decide to become a collection company themselves because they would make it cheaper. So they would be they could build a competitive advantage in this business. So as you can see, you can find a lot of different business models. And again, the idea of Odyssey is, besides just thinking about the innovative product, you can think about an innovative business model. Okay, so now we're done with my presentation. I just have a final thing that I wanted to show you as a conclusion. And as a conclusion, every time we think about innovation, this should be on your mind. Elizabeth, here I need you. You need
okay.
to. I'll ask you a small question here. I'll show you. My next slide is an animal. Can you please tell me what you see?
I see a duck.
A duck. Okay, so is everybody seeing a duck? Does everybody see a duck? Okay. Oh, some people tell me a rabbit. Interesting. A rabbit, a duck. Yes, a duck, and others see a rabbit. Aha. So I think this picture is very well known for all those of you who know it already. You know that you can see both a rabbit and a duck if you look at it closely. For those of you who don't know the picture and who are still struggling, because usually what you see is either the duck or the rabbit at the beginning, when you see one, then your brain stops basically because you've seen it, right? I've asked you a question, what do you see? And you've answered the question and your brain stops. This is exactly what our problem is when you think about innovation. It's mental blindness. It's the fact that if we are an expert in a field, if we are an expert if our company is an expert, if we have always been successful, we will always only see the duck. And the thing is to push our brains so as we can also see the rabbit. And that's one of the most difficult things. And this is what we want to do with Odyssey 314. So seeing the duck when you see the rabbit, or seeing the rabbit when you see the duck, is what we aim in stimulating your creativity with this approach. Okay, so this is the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And let's see if we have some questions here. I see that Martin has a question that was about the business models that we use. Are they based on quantitative analytics? Are these analytics part of the course? Oh no, I have to admit here that this is really only observation. We have collected the cases, documented the cases, but there is no real analytics in this sense behind it. It's really an analysis, a qualitative analysis, I would say, of the cases that we have collected. So there are no analytics per se in the Odyssey 314 course. There is another question by Ahmed about where we can classify WhatsApp business model after it was acquired by Facebook. That's a very good question. I think it's still a business model as it was before, but it's now even used more intensively because it's linked to Facebook. By the way, a company can have, of course, several business models. There is not only one business model in a company, right? So mixing different business models, this is called corporate strategy, and this is what companies do all the time. I see that Gianluca had a question saying that he would also add why in the value proposition. Yes, you could also tell the customer why you are doing it and what is specific for whom, the customer, and why it is, what will it do for the customer. So I agree, you could also use why. And finally, another question by Martin, who says, who is wondering whether there are some financial analysis in the case. So we give you information about globally about the profit equation, but we don't dig into the details of the finance part as such. What you can do if you're interested by the finance, we have also an app book that we have published on either on Google Play or the App Store, where you can have all the details of the cases that we have documented. So they're about 85 on the app right now, and you can play with them and you can look at them. So there are no specific numbers, but we tell you at least how the profit equation is working. Okay, and so I think that's it. I hand it now over to Elizabeth for a wrap up, and thank you very much for your listening during this webinar, and I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you, and I hope to see you soon on our online course. Bye-bye. I'll leave on to Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Laurence, and thank you for this very insightful and instructive presentation of your Odyssey 3.14 method. So now for those of you who'd be interested in finding out how to apply for the Online Masters in Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which Laurence Lehmann Ortega teaches on, please find some more information here with regards to the program. So first, with regards to our eligibility criteria. For those participants interested in applying for the Online Masters, we ask that you have at least a bachelor's degree, at least 5 years of professional experience, and that you be proficient in English, as the courses are taught exclusively in English. And if possible, as well, if you have a project in line with this Online Masters, that's ideal. If you meet these criteria, then you can apply directly on our online platform. So here I've listed all the things that you will need to complete, and notably you'll need to complete 7 essays. You'll also need to complete 2 letters of recommendation, as well as upload a 3-minute video pitch where you explain your motivations for following this online program. So following the submission of your application, your online application, a selection jury will convene and will come back to you within 1 month with their decision whether or not you're selected onto this Online Masters. We work on a rolling admissions basis, meaning we accept applications all year round. That said, there are a limited number of spaces on the program, and we've received a strong demand as well. So we encourage you to submit your application early and ideally by next Wednesday, July 19th. Bear in mind that the next intake will start in September 2017. Now, if you do not possess the eligibility criteria which I shared with you, so notably if you don't have a bachelor's degree, if you don't have an intermediate level in English, if you don't have at least 5 years of professional experience, we encourage you to start with the online certificate, so the first 12 courses of the program. And strong performance on the certificate will be taken into consideration when you then apply for the Online Masters. So for more information about the Online Masters and the Online Certificate, be sure to visit our websites. Here are the pages. Or feel free to contact either my colleague Miranda or Maria or myself. Here are our email addresses as well as phone numbers. You can also reach out to us on the OMIE, O-M-I-E, at hec.fr email address. So we're going to log off pretty soon, but before we log off, I invite you to share your comments and feedback with us with a very short little online quiz right after this presentation. So I want to thank you once again for your attention. I want to thank you, Laurence, for your wonderful and insightful presentation. And I want to thank you all for staying with us for this hour-long webinar. And we look forward to welcoming you for another webinar in a couple weeks' time. Take care and have a great day.